Hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Liam Crafton Jr., aka Zorvalchan, Less Than Guru, and today I would like to talk about my Intuit group. So, in Palladium, they have Men of Magic, Clergy, Men of Arms, and considering how you take it in Adventure of High Seas, they have entertainers, but they don't necessarily say these are entertainers. It's not necessarily spelled out like it is in the original book. And then when you get to the Ensloth Jungle book, they have a lot of things that they don't tell you what category they go into. And they probably, within that time of writing, they probably didn't care too much about the category. But there are certain rules that say, if you're a non-man at arms, you don't get this, or you get these penalties, or you get these bonuses, or something like that. So I wanted clear-cut groupings. And one of the things that I've stated previously for like my academics, and why I call them academics and not men of magic, is I didn't necessarily, Mars Video Can't just jumped into screen. Why I changed and don't have men of magic and clergy like Palladium does is I didn't agree with some of the choices. To me, clergy are all gaining their powers from some higher being, some higher power, and men of magic are the ones studying the magic. So I didn't think that symbologists fit in. I didn't, or sorry, as men of magic, I didn't think that the witches fit in, and I didn't think the warlocks fit in. And also then clergy, they had the healer, which the healer did not gain their power whatsoever from any external source. It's specifically ISP because it's coming from inside of them. And then you have like your mind mage, which is a man of magic, but that's something that they just have. So I started breaking things up. And what happened is I ended up with this grouping here that individually didn't make sense to put in other places, but actually it makes really cool sense when you put them together, and I'll explain why. So my grouping of Intuits is the Adept, which is based off of the Psi Mystic from the Palladium's second edition and from Rifts, which they intuitively learn as they level up both spells and psychic abilities. And I really love that class, character class in Rifts, and it was one of the few things that I really liked as an improvement to second edition, first edition, and that's basically because it wasn't in first edition. So that is something that I definitely wanted to bring over. The Beastmaster is in Ensloth Jungle, and they're not like a druid that's nature worshiper. They just are able to intuitively communicate and be helpful towards animals, like a healer for animals instead of a healer for the sentient creatures, like a healer. And then we go into healer. Healer is something that they use their internal ISP and their powers that way intuitively to heal. They don't need to study like a mage, and they don't need to have a higher source of power giving them healing abilities. They just do it naturally. The Illusionist is from the second book, Old Ones, and it was a cutting room floor from the original core rules that was basically a master psionic and a major psionic and a master psionic. Instead of choosing psionics, could choose to be illusionist. So they also use ISP. And then the mind mage doesn't have to study for their stuff. They learn it intuitively. So one of the things I looked at was like all of these things that don't fit into my vision of where these occupations should go all fit the concept of intuitively knowing how to do things and learning by either meditation or going out and just using their abilities and getting better at them. It's just something that naturally happens to them. So that is where I get my ISP differentiation from my magic points. So I don't use PPE, and I explained why I don't use PPE, and my magic point changed. But ISP, I didn't change how they work with illusionists and how they worked with mind mages, but for say, and the healer, but for my adept who gets both psionics and magic spells, They just use ISP to power it. And when we get into the Adept, I'll explain how that works. But it was just a serendipitous thing that happened, that it was like, oh, wow, all of these things that don't fit into my concept of where the other groups fit all together nicely. So that's how I came up with the Intuit grouping. So here, Intuits have mystical abilities that come naturally. Their powers and abilities come from within. Some Intuits possess natural magic, while others develop psychic powers, and still others have a rapport with nature that they gain powers. Intuits don't need to study as academics or devote their life to a higher power as the clergy. Intuits cannot go into another Intuit occupation. So that is one of the things. If you start off with an Intuit or you switch and become an Intuit, uh, you really can't switch into it. Also, is another one of the things. The thing I'm thinking about is elves who are adepts. They are adepts plus something else, and if they wanted to, they could drop that other thing and focused on adept only. So that's kind of a little corner case. But normally, once you naturally have those abilities, and then when you when they manifest, you can't change it. So if you manifest your abilities as a Beastmaster and don't have ISP, but get all these other powers of getting extra familiars and healing animals and such, then you do that and you can't change it. You've already chosen, or your path was chosen for you, depending on if you're talking in character or out of character. Likewise, if somebody has psionics, I previously talked about a player can choose to have psionics by lowering their attribute dice. If they don't want to do that and they just want to be a psychic character, they could choose Mind Mage and they wouldn't have to do that. But then they've chosen an Intuit occupation. That's what they're doing, and that sets their path. And it wouldn't be a person who loses some attributes, gains psychic abilities, and then chooses to be a beastmaster or adept or an acrobat or something like that. And then what they can do with their character points is they can raise PP, ME, and MA. So being a little more natural, things coming to them, I think PP works out well, especially for like the Beastmaster. Even the healer being able to feel and touch and figure out how things work. PP makes sense, mental endurance and mental affinity, not necessarily IQ because they're not studious, they're not the academics. And then they get their bonus. They don't make magic items or things like that, except for they don't make magic items at all. So what they can do, because that's either a divine granted thing or an intelligence academic thing, if they spend a character point against a saving throw, they can add a d8. Basically, their natural ability to work mystical energies gives them better chances to save. So that's how I worked with that. And I just see that I absolutely lied. Adepts and mind mages can make mystic items. See magic items. So that might be, sometimes I go through phases, and this happens officially when I do Torg Eternity stuff, is you get various iterations and you can't remember which one you ended up with. So apparently I ended up with determining that adepts and mind mages can make magic items. And then when we do finally eventually get to the magic items, we'll be able to talk about that. So that's my Intuit grouping. And next episode, we will get into an actual Intuit occupation. Having said that, once again, I'm Liam Crafton Jr., aka Zorachan, Less Than Guru. And until next time, I will catch you later.